16-year-old Zara moved like the music lived inside her. Her feet brushed the cracked sidewalk outside one of the city's most expensive art centers, each spin and step more powerful than the last. She wore no stage costume, just worn sneakers, faded jeans, and a thin hoodie that didn't do much against the wind. Her hair was tied back with a shoelace, and a torn cap lay in front of her on the ground, filled with a handful of coins from people who had stopped to watch. But still, she danced like nothing else mattered. Cars passed by without slowing, but a small group had gathered to watch her. Some were regular folks on their way home, others just curious. But all of them stood still, drawn in by the way she moved. Her body told a story no words could. She didn't dance for fun, she danced like she was surviving with every motion. Up above, behind a large tinted window on the second floor of the building, Victoria Whitmore stood with her arms crossed. She wore a tailored suit and sipped from a glass of sparkling water. Her face barely moved as she looked down at the crowd. "Look what the wind dragged in," she said coldly, her eyes locked on Zara. To her, this wasn't art. It was a problem. Zara didn't fit the image Victoria had worked years to build, an image of clean walls, rich donors, and carefully selected performers. From where she stood, talent meant nothing if it came wrapped in dirty clothes and danced on concrete. What she didn't know was that the girl she was watching would soon turn her perfect world upside down. But for now, all she saw was someone to get rid of. The moment didn't stay peaceful for long. From inside the building, the glass door swung open and 3 security guards stepped out. They weren't in a rush, but their steps were heavy and sure, like they'd done this before. The tallest one pointed straight at Zara. "Hey, you, stop that," he barked. Zara froze mid-turn, breathing hard, but not backing down. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she stood straight and met their eyes. "I'm on a public sidewalk," she said calmly, not yelling, just making sure they heard her. "I'm not doing anything wrong." The guard didn't care. He walked over and kicked her cap, sending the coins scattering across the concrete. A few people in the small crowd gasped. Zara's hands shook slightly, but she bent down and started picking up the coins without saying a word. The second guard spoke now, louder. "You're disturbing our guests. Move along or we'll call the police." Zara didn't cry. She didn't beg. After a moment, she looked up at all 3 of them and said something quiet for the crowd to hear, but just loud enough for the guards to flinch. "You'll remember me one day," she said. "You'll wish you'd treated me with respect." Then she picked up the last coin, stood up, and turned to walk away. Her back was straight, and even though her shoes were worn and her hands were shaking, she moved like someone who wasn't broken, just waiting for the right time. None of the guards followed her. Maybe they thought it was over. Maybe they didn't know they just made a mistake that would come back in ways they couldn't imagine. Across the street, a black car had pulled up to a stop. Inside sat James Patterson, a well-known real estate developer, with his 12-year-old son Marcus in the passenger seat. Marcus was quiet most days. He'd been born with cerebral palsy, and lately, he hadn't shown much interest in anything, not even his therapy sessions. But now, something was different. He leaned forward, eyes wide, and pressed his hand against the window. "Dad, stop the car," he said, his voice soft but sure. James looked over, confused, but did as his son asked. Through the glass, Marcus was watching Zara. She was still picking up her scattered coins, but to him, it didn't matter. "That girl," he said quietly, "she dances like the angels Mom used to talk about." James looked out the window too. He hadn't really noticed her before, but now that he did, he couldn't look away. There was something powerful about the way she moved, even when she was just kneeling on the ground. She didn't seem weak. She seemed like someone who had decided not to break, no matter how many times life tried to push her down. James hadn't seen Marcus light up like this in months. Since his wife passed away, their home had felt heavy and quiet. But now, sitting in the car, something had changed, and it wasn't just Marcus who felt it. James could feel it too. Something about that girl made the world pause for a second. Neither of them knew her name yet, but they both knew this wasn't the last time they'd see her. The next day, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the girl from the sidewalk. At breakfast, during therapy, even while watching TV, she was always on his mind. "Dad, do you think we'll see her again?" he asked more than once. James didn't have an answer. He didn't even know her name. But what stuck with him wasn't just her dancing, it was the way she looked at the guards. The way she stood tall even when they tried to shame her. That kind of strength doesn't come from nowhere. Later that week, James finally gave into his gut feeling. He got in the car with Marcus and told his assistant to drive downtown. "We're looking for someone," he said. For hours, they circled different blocks. They asked a few people, but no one seemed to know her. Marcus kept watching through the window, eyes scanning every corner. And then, just as they were about to give up, he shouted, "There, it's her." Zara was dancing again, this time in a quieter square with fewer people around. Her cap was on the ground again, collecting spare change, but the way she moved hadn't changed a bit. James pulled the car over. He got out slowly, not wanting to scare her. "You're the dancing girl," he said, walking up with Marcus in his wheelchair. Zara stopped. At first, her face tightened like she was ready for another insult or another threat. But when she saw Marcus smiling at her, something in her eyes softened. She lowered her guard just a little. For the first time in a long time, someone had come toward her without judgment in their eyes. James didn't waste time. Standing in front of Zara, he nodded toward Marcus. "My son hasn't stopped talking about you," he said. Zara stayed quiet, unsure if this was real or just another trick. People often smiled at her only to turn cold the moment she stepped too close. But Marcus, he looked at her like she mattered. "You were amazing," he said. "Those men were mean to you. My dad was really mad about it." Zara glanced at James, then back at Marcus. "Your dad seems nicer than most people in that fancy building," she said with a small smile. James smiled back. "We'd love to invite you over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just something different." "Marcus wants to see you dance again." Zara hesitated. She wasn't used to being invited anywhere, let alone to someone's home. But something in their faces made her feel safe, not pitied, not judged, just seen. After a moment, she nodded. That evening, she arrived at their house. The backyard was big, with soft lights and quiet music playing from a speaker. Zara danced again, but this time it felt lighter, like she wasn't dancing to survive, but to share something. Marcus clapped along, smiling wider than he had in months. James watched from a distance, amazed by the change in his son. Later, after dinner, James sat with Zara on the porch. The night was quiet. "Where did you learn to dance like that?" he asked. Zara looked down. "My mom," she said. "She was a ballerina once, got a scholarship to a big school, but when they found out she was pregnant with me, they kicked her out." Her voice dropped. "The woman who runs that center now, she made sure my mom never danced again." James didn't say anything right away. He looked at Zara, really looked at her not as a street kid, but as someone carrying way more than any teenager should. Her words hit hard. This wasn't just about dance. It was about being shut out before she was even born. Zara kept her eyes on the ground. "My mom died when I was 13, she said quietly. "She always blamed herself, like she wasn't good enough. But she was better than good." James felt something tighten in his chest. The name Zara had mentioned, Victoria Whitmore, it matched the woman who ran the very center that kicked Zara off their steps. The same woman smiling in press photos, shaking hands with donors, pretending to care about art and fairness. He'd worked with people like that his whole life, charming on the outside, rotten underneath. He finally spoke. "You didn't end up dancing outside that building by chance, did you?" Zara met his eyes. "No, I knew where I was. I wanted her to see me. I wanted to see what she'd do. And she did exactly what I expected." James realized then that Zara wasn't just a kid trying to get by. She was smart, careful, and very aware of the world she was up against. She hadn't just been dancing, she had been watching, testing, planning. There was a fire in her that reminded him of people who never let the world decide who they were. And now, he knew this wasn't the end of something. It was just the beginning. A few days later, Zara showed up at James's house carrying a small, beat-up folder. She handed it to him without saying much and waited. James opened it, thinking maybe it was artwork or letters. But inside were printed emails, photos, screenshots, and notes. Some were about Victoria Whitmore. Others were about shady contracts, scholarship rejections, and private meetings that didn't look so private. "How did you get all this?" James asked, flipping through the pages. His face was tight with disbelief. Zara shrugged. "People think I'm invisible, that I don't notice things, but I do, and sometimes I meet people who notice things, too." She didn't go into detail, but it was clear she had helped smart help, activists, Maybe. Tech-savvy kids like her, people who knew how to dig without being seen. She had been building this file for over 2 years. Every paper inside had one goal, the truth. James leaned back, speechless. These weren't just rumors. This was real proof of racism, of abuse of power, of stolen chances. And it wasn't just Zara's mom who got pushed out. There were others, dozens of students who never got their shot because someone decided they didn't belong. Zara wasn't out for pity or revenge. She was working on something bigger. She didn't want to just bring Victoria down. She wanted to open the door for everyone else Victoria had locked out. This isn't just about me, she said, her voice steady. It's about every kid who never even got the chance to try. And at that moment, James knew he wasn't just helping a talented girl, he was standing beside a storm that was about to shake the whole system. While Zara's plan slowly came together in the background, something unexpected started happening right in front of everyone. Marcus was getting better. At first, it was small things. He sat up straighter in his chair. His hands didn't shake as much. His face looked brighter. Then came bigger changes. During their time together, Zara would dance in ways that encouraged him to move along. Not just watch, but join. She'd take his hands, guide his arms, move around him with a rhythm that made him forget he was even trying. Doctors noticed it too. At his next therapy visit, his physical therapist raised an eyebrow. "What have you been doing?" she asked. "James, because this progress, it's not normal. It's better." James told her the truth. Marcus hadn't been responding to standard treatment, but with Zara, it was different. He laughed more. He pushed himself more. He wanted to move, not because someone told him to, but because it felt like life again, like joy. Zara never claimed to be a healer. She just knew how to connect with music, with movement, and with someone who felt just as out of place as she did. For Marcus, her dancing wasn't just something pretty to watch. It was something that reached into him and reminded him what hope felt like. Every step she took gave him a reason to try again, and the more he moved, the more the doctors looked at each other and whispered the word they hadn't used in a long time. Miracle. The night of the big charity event came fast. The Metropolitan Cultural Center was packed with rich guests in shiny suits and evening gowns, sipping drinks and clapping politely at speeches they barely listened to. Victoria Whitmore stood near the stage, glowing with pride. This was her world, polished, powerful, perfect. She had no idea that everything she built was about to fall apart in front of everyone. James Patterson walked on stage as the crowd applauded. He didn't look nervous. He didn't smile much either. "Before I speak about donations," he said into the mic, "I want to tell you a story." The room went quiet. A few people shifted in their seats. Victoria smiled stiffly, unsure where this was going. James told them about Zara, how he and Marcus had seen her dancing in the street, how she had been thrown out like trash for no reason, except who she was and where she came from. People in the crowd started to whisper. Victoria's face tightened. Then James said her name. He spoke clearly, firmly. Victoria Whitmore canceled a scholarship 17 years ago for a dancer named Sarah Johnson just because she was pregnant, and last month, she kicked Sarah's daughter off the sidewalk for dancing too well. The screen behind him came to life. Emails, letters, papers signed by Victoria herself, filled with excuses about why certain kids didn't fit the image of the school. Zara hadn't just collected stories, she had proof, line after line, rejection after rejection, and they all had one thing in common. The students they turned away didn't look like the ones they let in. Gasps filled the room. Victoria stepped forward, trying to stop it, but James wasn't done. "This girl," he said, "has more talent than half the people in this room, and you all ignored her because someone told you she didn't belong." The room was dead, silent, like everyone had forgotten how to breathe. Then, from the back of the hall, the doors opened. Zara walked in slowly, wearing a simple but elegant dress that James had helped her pick out. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. With her were 10 other young people, Black, Latino, Asian, all of them once rejected by Victoria's school. They walked together, calmly, as if they had every right to be there, because they did. Zara stepped onto the stage, eyes locked on Victoria. "You didn't just turn me away," she said. "You shut the door on all of us." Her voice was steady, not angry, but full of truth. "You spent years pretending this place stood for excellence, but really, it stood for fear of people like us showing what real talent looks like." The screen behind her changed again. This time, it showed something even worse: bank records, hidden payments, emails where money meant for scholarships had been rerouted into personal accounts. The truth was out. Victoria hadn't just been unfair. She had been stealing. There was no defense, no excuse she could give that would make this go away. People in the audience started standing up, not to leave, but to applaud, not for her. For Zara. James stepped up beside her and said what no one expected. This center no longer belongs to Victoria Whitmore. As of tonight, it's being renamed the Sarah Johnson Institute for Inclusive Arts, and Zara will be its new artistic director. Victoria sat frozen in her chair, her world unraveling. Zara, the girl she once kicked off the sidewalk, now stood on her stage stronger, braver, and finally heard. 6 months passed, and everything looked different. The same stage where Zara had once been banned now carried her voice every day. The Sarah Johnson Institute was no longer a place just for the privileged. It had become a home for real talent, kids from all walks of life, from different backgrounds, abilities, and stories. Scholarships were no longer handed out based on who someone knew or where they came from. They were given to kids who had something real to say through their art. Marcus, now 13, didn't need a wheelchair anymore. He used special crutches to move around, but he did it with confidence, smiling wider every time he walked. Doctors couldn't explain how quickly he progressed, but James didn't need an explanation. He'd seen it happen. It wasn't just about therapy. It was about feeling alive again. Zara had given that to his son. Zara was busier than ever, but somehow still made time to teach. Her classes were packed. Some students traveled across states just for the chance to be there. She had also started receiving offers to speak around the world from big universities, arts groups, even governments. But she stayed grounded. She never acted like a celebrity. To her, this wasn't about fame. It was about fixing what had been broken for so long. Across town, Victoria Whitmore sat alone in a small apartment. Everything she once had, her career, her house, her name, it was all gone. No schools wanted to hire her. No organizations wanted to be seen with her. Her fall had been quick and complete. And as the world moved forward, she stayed stuck, watching from a distance the life she once controlled, now led by the very girl she tried to erase. During a live TV interview, Zara sat across from a news anchor while millions watched from around the world. The topic wasn't just her dancing anymore, it was everything she had done since that night. The interviewer asked her the question everyone wanted to know: after everything Victoria did to you, do you feel satisfied now that she lost everything? Zara didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just answered honestly, she tried to erase me, but she ended up erasing herself. Her voice was calm. No anger, no bragging, just truth. She explained that revenge never changed anything. What did change the world was building something better, something strong enough to outlive hate. She said, I could have gotten even. I could have destroyed her with the same cruelty she used on me. But I wanted more than that. I wanted to prove that people like me, people who are shut out, ignored, judged, can lead, can create, can lift others up. Marcus, sitting next to her, added quietly, Zara didn't just help me walk. She showed me that even when people push you down, you can rise in a way that makes them wish they lifted you instead. The screen cut to photos of young dancers, Black, Latino, disabled, immigrants, smiling, performing, laughing. All of them had once been told they didn't belong. Now they were rising. Zara's mother's photo hung over the entrance to the institute with the words, talent has no color, no class, no limits, only the courage to keep showing up. Back in her dark apartment, Victoria watched in silence. No clapping, no guests, just the sound of her own mistakes echoing in a space that used to feel like power. Meanwhile, Zara, still only 17, was preparing to open 3 more branches of the institute. She didn't rise to crush anyone. She rose so others could rise with her. That was the real win.